A good Erev Shabbos, everybody. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe Lemar, Daber el Banav Lemar Keisavarchu es Bnei Yisrael Amar Lahem. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. V'yoyer Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha. V'yosem lecha shalom. V'samu Shemiah Bnei Yisrael b'ani avarachem. Today's sermon and tomorrow's Kiddush is sponsored by Ian Barnett and his sister Elise Barnett Hulin. They are sponsoring this in honor of their father's yahrzeit and their father's birthday. His name is Yaakov Baruch ben Binyamin. He should have a lichtika Gan Eden and go higher and higher in the heavenly worlds. It's also sponsored by the Goodman family. Their son is going off to Eretz Yisrael to study for a year. He should have lots of success. He should learn well. He should continue to give his parents lots of nachas. Azari, have a wonderful trip and a wonderful year, and keep in touch and keep giving us all nachas. If you have any questions regarding the high holidays this year, please visit our website, chabadconejo.com/HH2020, and all different possible ways that you can participate this year in high holiday services, whether you want to do it at home, whether you want to come out just for a few minutes to hear shofar, whether you want to come to outdoor services, whatever possible way we can be of assistance to you to make sure that indeed you have a wonderful Rosh Hashanah, a meaningful Rosh Hashanah, and an inspiring Yom Kippur. Our fall semester lineup has just been announced. It's on our website. You can go to jewishacademy.com. We have a series of wonderful, wonderful Zoom lectures coming your way with some of the top speakers of the world. We're going to have Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. We're going to have Chief Rabbi Lau. And there's one more lecture that's not yet on the website that's being worked on in its details. We're going to have Professor Alan Dershowitz speak for us in the month of October. So a powerful, powerful lineup of speakers, plus 20 different courses for you to choose from and study groups for you to choose from. Check it out, sneak preview, jewishacademy.com, but wait until after the sermon, and then you can check it out. Let's take a look at a few verses in this week's portion. It's chapter 22 that I want to focus on, and just a few verses from this portion. The Torah tells us, Lo sira ashor achicha o yeseyoi nidachim v'hasalamta mehem. The Torah tells us, you shall not see the ox of your brother, or his sheep, or goat cast off, and hide yourself from them. You shall surely return them to your brother. So the Torah tells us you're walking on the street and you see the ox of a friend of yours, a neighbor of yours, and it's lost. It's obviously lost. It's not where it should be. And it's wandering around. And so you say, it's not your problem. It's not your ox. So let someone else worry about it. Let the owner worry about it. It's not my problem. Says the Torah, no, you cannot hide your eyes from it. If you see an item that is lost, you need to go ahead, you need to take the item and return the item, even if it's an ox, which requires a lot of effort. You need to return it to its owner. The verse goes ahead and continues. Again, I read to you from the text of this week's portion. If your brother is not near you and you don't know him, let us suppose you don't know the owner of the particular item, then gather it inside your house. Then take it to your house, and it shall remain with you until your brother inquires after it. You have a responsibility to pick up the lost item that you found on the street and to find its rightful owner, even if it's going to take effort, and especially in the days of people having their animals out, and you have to take the animal into your house, you have to feed the animal, you have to take care of the animal. Yes, you can get reimbursed later once the owner is found, but you have the responsibility to go ahead and take this item to your possession and look for the rightful owner. There's an entire tractate of the Talmud called Baba Metzia just dealing with this question of the finding of items in the street. But the Torah goes on, and the Torah says, the next verse, so shall you do for his donkey, so shall you do for his garment, so shall you do for any lost article of your brother that may become lost from him, and you find it, you shall not hide yourself. Can't close your eyes and say, hey, if I make believe I didn't see it, I'm not going to have the burden of finding the owner. It's a headache I don't want. I don't have the time for it. Says the Torah, God knows if you saw it, and therefore you can't hide it from God. If you saw it, you have the obligation to pick it up and to find its rightful owner. The next verse, you shall not see the donkey of your brother or his ox falling on the road and hide yourself from them. You shall surely stand them up with him. Interesting verse. Again, we'll use the example of the Torah back in the days where people used their donkeys to carry their packages. Your donkey is walking on the street. He's got a lot, not your donkey, your neighbor's donkey is walking on the street. The donkey is overloaded with packages, and the donkey is making some noise. Oh, it's too heavy. It's got too much. And the donkey is kvetching around because the donkey can't carry the load. Again, you're going to say, it's not my problem. It's not my donkey. It's my neighbor's donkey. And it's just a donkey. Says the Torah, no, you have to stop what you're doing. You have to go and help the donkey and your neighbor out. Unload some of the packages. It's too much for the donkey to carry. It's the beauty of Torah. The Torah tells us that we have an obligation to help. That it literally goes ahead and puts into the Torah, institutionalizes kindness. That kindness is not an option. Kindness is not something left to you to decide if you want to be kind or not. The Torah makes it part of the mitzvot, part of the commandments of the Torah. Now, it's so interesting that the same verses are found earlier in the book of Exodus, the first time around. Again, the book of Deuteronomy is Moses' repetition of the commandments. But when the commandment is first said, there's a slight change in the verse. It doesn't say your friend's donkey, your friend's garment is found. In the book of Exodus, it says your enemies. Even if it's a neighbor that you don't like, even if it's someone that you constantly argue with, someone that you're constantly battling, and now you see is their garment on the floor, you're going to say to yourself, I'm definitely not going to pick it up. It's that fellow that keeps arguing with me. It's that fellow that's not nice to me. It's that fellow that yells at me. Says the Torah, you have to stop, you have to pick it up. It makes no difference if you love the person or you don't love the person, if you consider yourself enemies or you consider yourself brothers. Why does the book of Deuteronomy change the word from enemy to friend, to brother? Very simple. Because hopefully by now you have demonstrated that you care about that person. From the book of Exodus, from the study of the book of Exodus to the study of the book of Deuteronomy, you changed. At first, that person was an enemy, but because you showed them kindness, the relationship between you changed. So that you can have friction amongst people, and that's only normal. But how do we get through it? When we perform acts of kindness, when we do good deeds, when we care about one another, when we reach out to one another. The person receiving that favor changes their attitude towards you, but more importantly, you yourself change to them. It's interesting that you care about someone more after you care about them the first time. The moment you have already established a relationship of caring, suddenly that person is part of your life. And now you care about them even more. So book of Exodus, it may have looked at you, these two neighbors, as enemies. By the time we got to the study of the book of Deuteronomy a few months later, we have learned to become one. The Torah goes through its commandments, and the Torah is teaching us the importance of unity, the importance of being together, the importance of even those that we disagree with, even those that we think we don't have much in common with. The Torah continuously tells us mitzvah by mitzvah that we need to work on this and find our way to feel as if we are one. In 1929, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who was living in Latvia after having been exiled by Russia from the Bolsheviks, he took a 10-month trip to the United States. This was before he moved to the United States. He moved in 1940, but in 1929, he visited for a 10-month period. Some 55 years later, an article appeared in the newspaper called the Jewish Press, and it talked about the events of that 1929 visit to the United States. And in response to that story that was published about that visit, there was a letter to the editor that came a week later, which I'll now paraphrase for you. And the person that wrote this letter said, I had the privilege of meeting the previous Rebbe during that famous trip of 1929. To this day, even in my old age, I think about the disrespect with which my friends and I initially spoke about this great man. And I cringe when I think about it. The six of us were in our late teens living in Philadelphia at the time. It was before the Depression, it was before World War II, and we were enjoying life. We had all but abandoned our Judaism. Occasionally, we'd attend Reform services or join up with a Jewish youth group. We considered ourselves what we called progressive, enlightened, even superior Jews. One day, we read in the papers that a man named Rabbi Schneerson, known as the Lubavitcher Rebbe, had come to town and that he would be receiving visitors at our home on 33rd Street. As we read the story, my friends and I talked amongst ourselves, and we said, who does this rabbi think he is? Who does he think he is? He's coming here to give people blessings and advice. Where does he come off telling American Jews what's what? We were upset. Let him stay in Europe. Who asked him to come to our country and tell us what we should do, give us blessings? And we discussed this with our youth group leader, and he said, look, if it bothers you so much, why don't you visit him and ask him yourself? You want to know why he's visiting this country? Why doesn't he stay in Europe? Make an appointment, talk to him, and ask him. So we figured, yeah, you know what? Let's show this old-fashioned rabbi a thing or two. And so on Sunday, we got together. We went to the address on 33rd Street in Philadelphia. We climbed the steps to the front porch. We see through the window the house was crowded with people. We rang the doorbell, and a dignified, bearded man came to the door and inquired what we wanted. And we said, we want to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. We have an important question to ask him. So the man took out a piece of paper, and he said, okay, what's your question? Well, we'd like to know if he really expects contemporary guys like us to keep up this old-fashioned religion in a modern country such as this. So the man said, as you can see, there's a long line of people waiting to see the Rebbe, but come in and I'll see what I can do. We said, no, we'd rather stay here on the porch. We're not going in. Barely a minute went by before the man came back and said, the Rebbe wants to see you right away. We were beyond surprised. We were ushered into the house, past the waiting crowd, up the stairs. And at the top of the stairs stood the saintly rabbi. He was tall, handsome, with gleaming bright eyes and a warm smile. His hand was outstretched in greeting as we came up the stairs. He showed us into his room and he began to arrange the chairs around his desk to accompany the six of us. We offered to help him, but he insisted on doing it himself. He then looked up and he said, I want you to know that this is the happiest and most important moment for me since arriving in Philadelphia. And I know you're wondering about the people downstairs and why I invited you up ahead of them. The people downstairs are asking for my help. One man's daughter is not well, so I can pray for her recovery. But ultimately, it's dependent on God's mercy. Another person has a lawsuit and he wants me to pray that he will prevail. Do I really know who is right and who is wrong in that lawsuit? Perhaps I can convince him to pray for justice. There's a man that wants to buy a business and wants blessings for its success. There again, I can put in a good word with the Almighty. But if that would make it automatic, I would be a wealthy man myself. But your request, your challenge, your question, that's one that I must be able to respond to. Otherwise, I have no right to be a rabbi. First of all, the Rebbe went on to say, there are 613 commandments in the Torah. And while the Lubavitcher Rebbe tries his best, he finds that it's not always possible to keep all of them. There are many mitzvot that can only be performed by those living in Israel. There are many mitzvot that can only be performed during the temple times. Only mitzvahs, there are some mitzvahs only for a king, some for men, some for women. So I can't do all 613 as much as I want to. So what do? Do I discard all 613 because I can't keep them all? No. I keep as many as I possibly can. I do the best I could. And that way I get closer to God with what I can do. The Rebbe is saying this to us, and we're feeling this tremendous warmth, this love, this concern that was coming through his words and his eyes. And this venom that we felt and the cynicism that we felt coming in was melting away. And he continued by asking us to try to do something. Study the deepness of the Torah and keep as many mitzvot as you could, assuring us that in doing our utmost, yes, even living in this modern country of America, even being raised in the homes you were raised in, you would be doing the same thing as the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The same thing. Each of us striving to do what we can to come close to God. He then asked us for our Hebrew names and the names of our mothers. And then towards the end, he asked for a favor. He asked if he could have the honor of putting on tefillin with us, which we all did. Every one of us, we rolled up our sleeves. As much as we were cynics coming in, we felt a bond with this man. And each of us promised him that we're going to live up to his suggestions, that we're going to try to connect, pick the mitzvahs that we can. And he then blessed us individually. He shook our hands and we left. We walked through the crowd. We went out the door. We stood out the front porch, and we stood on that porch for 2 more hours, shaken as we tried to process what had just happened. We all undertook to try from that point on to pray at least once a day. Another of us resolved to give up his Saturday work and give up so that he shouldn't work on Shabbos. Another one went on to become a Chabad Chassid. I can tell you that none of our lives were the same after that day. All 6 of us went on to raise nice Jewish families with a sense of joy and profound awareness that America is indeed no different. You see, that, my friends, that was the Pintel Yid, that was the spark within the soul that the Rebbe was able to connect to get beyond the division, get beyond the separation, get beyond the fact that they come from different continents and different backgrounds, and to connect to that part of the soul. And when you ignite that part of the soul, the Pintel Yid, that spark of Judaism, it reveals itself even more and it shines forth. So we hear when we speak a lot and we talk a lot about Jewish unity. But when you think about it, what is the common denominator amongst the Jewish people? After all, we have different languages, different cultures, different nationalities. What really binds us together in an enduring way? At the end of the day, my friends, we only have one single nucleus. The only thing that truly bonds us to one another is the Torah and its mitzvot. Nothing else has proven capable of holding us together for more than maybe a generation or 2 at best. This is what first forged us as a nation, and it is the only common thread that has linked one generation to the next throughout the millennia ever since. Think for a moment. Have you ever spoken to a connoisseur of fine wine? It's a fascinating thing. Try it. Ask a connoisseur of fine wine what he or she enjoys about a particular wine. And you might hear something like, well, it's ripe, it's rich, it's round, it's got lots of spicy berry flavors, something to that effect. But now ask that same question to a world-renowned expert on fine wine, not just to a connoisseur, but one of those experts. Ask them, what do you like about this particular wine? And you'll get something like this. Well, it has a very discreet bouquet, elegant, soft tannins. It's perhaps reminiscent of raspberry and almonds. The taste is predominantly cherry, but it's got berry elements, including strawberry and raspberry. It has a hint of plum. Despite its delicate structure, it ages better than many wine lovers might assume. And it goes perfectly with lighter meats such as goose and duck. and it goes superb with Italian dishes. I have no idea what this means. I have no clue how you can taste a little bit of wine and give me a speech like that. For me, Kedem grape juice is delicious. That's what I love. It's sweet, it tastes good, I drink it, I'm happy. But you talk to these wine connoisseurs, they can talk and talk and talk. I believe that they know what they're talking about. I believe that they're not making it up. But I have no clue what they're talking about. The same is true of anything that has depth and complexity to it. The more you truly understand it, the more you appreciate it, the more joy it has to offer. The wine connoisseur, when they're talking about that wine, wow, their mouths are flavoring. They're feeling it. They want it. They're desiring it. And suddenly they feel the greater joy from drinking that wine. You and I can see an unusual architectural building. And we can see a building. And we'll say, wow, that's nice. Wow, it's a nice building. Good job. But an engineer, a student of architecture, or the builder of the structure who knows every nook and cranny, every support beam and stairwell that's inside will take far greater pleasure in the magnificence of the edifice because they know what went into the construction and therefore they appreciate it more. If your grandmother has cataract surgery, right, you say it's a miracle she can see again. And of course she's thrilled, as is everyone around her. But the surgeon who delicately adjusted every tiny fiber and nerve ending in restoring grandma's sight appreciates that accomplishment on a totally different level. So why am I talking to you about wine and architecture and cataract surgery? You see, the Torah is not just an ancient document that has been handed down from generation to generation. The Torah is the manifestation of divine wisdom. There are the simple and direct meanings. You see a donkey that's lost, bring it home to its rightful owner. Then there are the allegorical or symbolic meanings. Then there's the homiletic teachings. Then there's the esoteric teachings. There's the mystical teachings. Each offers an infinite levels and layers, each offering a spiritual pleasure, delight of its own. Indeed, the same Torah that speaks to a 5-year-old child on one level, that same Torah speaks to a 70-year-old scholar on another. So when you study the 5 books of Moses, all the books of the prophets, you realize that these are not just stories of historical figures. You come to realize that this is your story. It's the drama of your life. It's talking directly to you. Every chapter, whether you're learning about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, or Abraham and Sarah in Mesopotamia, or Joseph in Egypt, or our ancestors in the desert, it comes alive and says something compelling, something profound, and above all, something relevant to you. And so it is with legal intricacies of the Mishnah and the Talmud, the early day commentaries, the latter day commentaries, the code of Jewish law, whether it's Jewish ethics, philosophy, Kabbalah, and Hasidus. These schools of thought broaden our horizons and expose us to a totally different understanding of the dynamics of creation and the relationship between God and his world, and between God and between man and man. If you take the time to discover the treasure at whatever level of pace works for you, you will find yourself savoring like the wine connoisseur savors the wine. You will savor what it means to be a Jew with a whole new level of appreciation and sophistication. King David said it this way, Ta'amu uru, taste it, taste it, taste it, and you will see that God is good, that the Torah is good, that the mitzvot are good. The thing about taste is that I can stand up here for an hour, for 2 hours, and try to describe to you in the most eloquent and descriptive of terms how delicious a custard eclair tastes. And weeks ago, I brought up this chocolate-covered eclair, and no one has brought one to me since. I'm a bit surprised there. I've talked about it. Of course, if you're going to do it, it's got to be from a kosher bakery. But it would be nice once in a while someone just surprised me, because it's now a few times that I've brought up this custard eclair. But we'll move on. But if I described it to you, how good it tastes, you may appreciate it, but you won't really appreciate it until you taste it, until you experience it for yourself. I can talk about how beautiful a sunrise or a sunset may be, but it's just words. And maybe if I put more time into the words, they'll be poetic words, and maybe it'll move you, but they're just words. You truly want to experience it, look out the window and see the sunrise or the sunset. Take a walk outside and see the sunrise and sunset. Tamuru, King David says. We can talk about the wisdom of Torah. We can talk about the unifying force of Torah. But if you really want to experience it, taste it. And so, as we move closer and closer to Rosh Hashanah, I want to urge everyone to take upon themselves a resolution for this year to be a more literate Jew, to study more, to learn more, to read more, to research more. And you say, but there's a pandemic going on, we can't go to classes. Well, there is 100 times more classes available during this pandemic than there were before. There are so many online courses and lectures and study groups. There is nothing you can't study from your simple phone, from your laptop, from your computer. It's all there for you. All of Judaism is there for you, available for you. So make it part of your life. You know, you're all familiar with the Nobel Prize. Between 1901 and 2014, there have been about 850 laureates have been awarded the coveted prize. Of the 850, 185 were awarded to Jews. That's 22% of all Nobel Prize recipients. That's a very high percentage. But it's even more shocking when you figure that we only make up 0.02 of 1% of the world population. 0.02 of the world population, 22% of the Nobel Prizes. Based on that percentage, a Jew should win a Nobel Prize once every 30 years. Do you hear me? Based on 0.02, we should win only one prize every 30 years. Instead, we make up 22% of all prizes. 36% of all those who won from the United States were Jewish. Did you know that? Yet we make up only 2% of the United States population. Why is this? I don't subscribe to the theory that it's part of our DNA. I believe rather it's because from the very beginning of us becoming a people, education and study have always been priority number one. There's a reason we are called the people of the book. So now that we have become the world's experts in every field of education, as proven by the amount of Nobel Prizes we have won, let's go back to the origins of our commitment to study. And that was Torah literacy, ethics, Kabbalah. This is who we are. This is what defines us. And this is what unites us. As one wise man put it, the study of Torah is not education. It's transformation. It transforms you. It transforms you as a person and as a Jew, because you're developing a much deeper understanding of what it means to be a human being, to be the crown jewel of creation, what it means to be a Jew, what it means to be a member of God's chosen people. As Jews, we're obligated to serve God with joy. The Torah and the mitzvahs can be vehicles for tremendous joy and satisfaction in our lives. That joy is magnified by our appreciation for the depth of what it's really all about at its deepest and most essential level. We don't just go through the motions of reciting the prayers and observing the rituals and traditions. We develop an understanding of its deeper meaning and its complexities. And thus we experience the truest joy, the truest flavor. And this ultimately is the ultimate unifier of all the Jewish people throughout the entire world. That we all come together, we all can study a verse from the Torah. We can all reach out to one another, so that indeed in the simplest of verses, when the Torah tells us, care for your neighbor, we mean it, we follow it literally, and it unifies us, not just in this one commandment, but in every aspect of our life. So let's make it a Torah year. Let's make it a year which we're truly a united people through the study of our Torah and the performance of our mitzvahs. Have a wonderful Shabbat. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we look forward to seeing you next week.